Hello and welcome. This flow is going to be all about stretching out hips and hamstrings and with a little bit of strengthening thrown in at the end. We'll have an option for 2 yoga blocks and a blanket for some padding for our knees. Let's get started. All right, we're going to work on hips, strengthening, stretching, opening up our hips, and stretching out our hamstrings as well. A little bit of inner thigh work, the whole hip area. I'm going to use a blanket as padding for my knees, and you have an option to use 2 yoga blocks. Not necessary, but optional. So let's get started. We'll come to child's pose. So take knees wide, toes touching, sink your tailbone down towards your hips, down towards your heels. Sink your hips down, walk your hands forward. You can put a yoga block under your forehead if you need to, otherwise forehead to the mat. Really stretch into your ribs here. Take a deep breath in, full breath out. Another deep breath in. And as you exhale, walk your hands over towards the right and feel a stretch in your left side ribs. Keep that tailbone sunk down towards your heels as much as possible. And then come back to center. Full exhale. Big inhale in. And on your next exhale, walk your hands out towards the left and feel a stretch in your right side ribs. And walk your hands back to center. We'll come into tabletop pose, and I like to use a blanket under my knees for this. It's optional, but my knees appreciate it. So in tabletop pose, hips directly over knees, hands directly underneath your shoulders, and you can come up onto fists if that hurts your wrists. Be sure to spread your fingers wide and press into your knuckles. That'll take some pressure off of your wrists. And we'll do a little hip sway side to side. Start to get those hips warmed up. And we'll come into cat-cow, and you have the option to keep your fingers right here where they're at, or do a little wrist stretch while we're at it. So to do that, you can take your pinky fingers towards the outside edges of the mat and then bring them all the way around so that now your middle finger is facing your knees. Do that on both sides. You're also welcome to just keep your fingers pointed forward in traditional tabletop pose. So from here, fully exhale, and then on your next inhale, lower your belly down towards the ground as you shine your heart forward towards the front of the room. On an exhale, pull your belly button up towards your spine, arch your back towards the ceiling. Inhale as you lower down and look forward, tailbone points up. Exhale as you round your back, arch it towards the ceiling, press through your shoulder blades. Do 2 more at your own rate. And then if you had your fingers backwards, go ahead and just very gently lean your hips backwards as you raise your palms up off the mat. Notice that that changes the stretch into your fingers, and then very slowly lift those fingers up off the mat. And we'll come to downward facing dog now. So toes up, tuck your toes underneath, palms really, fingers wide, palms to the mat, fingers sucked onto the mat so that there's no space underneath your fingers. Really press those fingers in, tuck your toes under, and then keeping your knees bent, lift your tailbone up towards the sky and press as hard as you can away from your fingers. Your chest towards your thighs, and then slowly straighten out those legs if it's comfortable for you. Maybe pedal out your legs here. Bend one knee and then the other. And I'm going to keep that blanket right there because I'm going to use it again. So inhale and lift your right leg up towards the ceiling. Bend that knee and let your heel come down towards your rear end and open up your hip towards the side. Really feel the stretch in the front of that thigh. Straighten out your leg up towards the ceiling again. And we're going to step that foot through between our hands into a high lunge. If you'd like to, this is where I love to use yoga blocks. I like to press into the yoga blocks. It helps me lift up higher, helps me keep a longer spine and take a deeper breath. So really feel this right here in that back leg. And then gently lower that knee to the ground and release your back foot, top of your foot to the mat, and let gravity take your hips down towards the ground at the same time as you're lifting your chest up. Let gravity settle in here. And then on an exhale, shift your hips backwards so that now that front leg is straight. Maybe those front toes pop up off the ground. This turns it into a hamstring stretch. Your hands can be on the yoga blocks or on the mat, whichever is comfortable for you. Inhale as you shift forward, shine your heart forward. Exhale as you shift your hips backwards. 2 more times. And then meet me up front. From here, if you have yoga blocks, set them aside. Take both hands to the inside of that foot and heel toe this foot towards the outside edge of the mat. And then kind of let your hips just fall down to the ground here and maybe sway side to side. You can also be up on yoga blocks if you need to. The lower your arms are, the more of a stretch this is going to be. If you're really, really flexible, you can even take your forearms down to the mat. Just find a spot, sway it out, really notice that hip stretch. And then bring this foot back to where it was and take that right hand to the outside of that foot. Tuck your left toes under, your back toes, come back up on that heel, plant your left hand on the mat right next to that foot, and inhale your right arm up towards the sky in a stretch. Lovely twist. Spiral your heart up towards the ceiling. And then lower that hand down inside of the foot. And we're going to do the same wrist stretch that we did before. I'm moving this hand out of the way so you can see. Your right hand is going to be right next to your right foot, heel to heel. We're going to take that right pinky finger towards the outside of the foot and bring that hand all the way around so that the base of your hand, the heel of your hand, is right next to the heel of your foot. And inhale, arm up. Do a nice reverse twist here. Bring that hand back down. Hand to the outside of that foot, and you're going to step back into that downward facing dog. 3-legged dog. Lift that right heel up towards the sky and settle it down. Go ahead and pedal out those feet. Spread your fingers wide. Press into your knuckles. Really enjoy the stretch here. Maybe sway your hips side to side. Then on an inhale, lift your left heel up towards the sky. Bend that left knee and let that heel come towards your rear end. Open up your hips towards the side. Bring that heel straight back up and step that foot through. We're in that high lunge here. This is where you can come to yoga blocks again if you'd like to. Feel a stretch in the front of that back leg. So your chest is up high, you're not slouching through your back. And then go ahead and drop that right knee down to the mat. Release that back foot, top of your foot to the mat. Let gravity very gently take your hips down towards the mat here as you keep pressing up through your chest. Settle in and just very gently let gravity release some tension in the front of that back leg. And then on an exhale, we're going to shift our hips towards that back foot. Maybe pop up the front toes as you straighten that front leg. And go ahead and just settle into this hamstring stretch. Inhale as you come forward. Exhale as you press backward. Again, the yoga blocks are optional. They just help me lift up taller so that I can take a deeper breath. Exhale back. Inhale forward one more time. Exhale back. And inhale forward. And from here, go ahead and set your yoga blocks to the front of the mat. Bring both hands down. Take your left hand inside of that foot and heel toe this left foot towards the outside edge of the mat. And then if you need to readjust your back foot, you can. Go ahead and just sway back and forth a little bit here. This knee might come out a little bit. And again, you can use yoga blocks here if you'd like to, or hands to the mat, or if you're really, really flexible, you can bring your forearms down to the mat. Just sway through that. Notice how that feels on your hips. Find your sweet spot. Just really enjoy the stretch. And then we're going to take our left hand back to the outside and heel toe this foot back a little bit more towards the center. Pop up on your back toes, lift that back knee, plant your right hand to the mat, left arm up towards the ceiling, spiral your heart upwards into a twist. When you come down, bring this left hand right so that the heel of your hand is right by the heel of your foot. And then take your pinky finger towards the outside of your foot and go ahead and wrap it all the way around so that your fingers are pointing backwards again. So the heel of your hand is right next to the heel of your foot. And then inhale that right hand up. And we're reversing that twist. Bring your hands back down. Untwist that left hand, bring it to the outside. Step back into that downward facing dog, 3 legs. 3-legged dog. And back down to the mat. Pedal out those feet. Spread your fingers wide. Press into your knuckles. Think about really pressing your torso, your chest towards your thighs. And then we'll lower our knees down back into tabletop pose. We might as well add a little bit of core work into this. So from tabletop pose, press your shoulder blades up towards the ceiling. Tuck your toes under. And then lift your knees just a couple of inches off the mat. Notice your core kicking in. This is a variation of plank pose. Your core is doing a lot of work to hold your knees up off the ground here. Breathe through this. Take a couple of really deep breaths. Think about pressing your shoulder blades up towards the ceiling. And go ahead and lower that down. And now we're going to come to seated on the mat and do a lot more stretching. So however you want to get there, drop down to one hip. You can set the blanket aside. And we'll start in butterfly pose. So in butterfly pose, knees wide, soles of feet together. Go ahead and shift and adjust and do what you need to do to get comfortable right here. Sit up nice and tall. So as you root your sit bones into the mat, think about breathing your spine up tall at the same time that you lower your shoulders down so that your shoulders aren't scrunched up. You might need to adjust how close or how far your feet are in front of you. Sit up nice and tall and maybe just sway side to side a little bit. Or maybe flutter those butterfly wings, open up through the inner thighs and hips. And then take your right leg out long. Bring your left sole of your foot to that inner thigh. So readjust as you need to. And from here, what we're going to do is shift our torso over towards that extended leg. Pop these toes up. So really flex, activate this foot. Sit up nice and tall and keeping that long spine. Inhale tall. Walk forward without curving your back. Just enough to where you feel a hamstring stretch kicking in on that leg. So you're aiming your chest towards those extended toes. It doesn't take very far to feel a stretch in the back of that leg. Now walk your hands back up. This time we're going to round and fold into that. So we'll start by making sure that your chest is aimed towards those toes. Dip your chin and then round your back and walk your hands forward and just really fold and melt into this. And this is going to look very different for everybody. So maybe this is as far as you go. If you'd like to, you can put forearms to the mat. Take your palms upwards. If you're really flexible, you can keep walking forward. Hold on to that foot. Take a couple of deep breaths here and just really settle into this stretch. So from here, pay attention. My right leg is extended. I'm going to take my left hand to the outside ankle of that right foot. On an inhale, reach my right arm behind me, come into a nice stretch, open up through my chest and collarbones. Full breath in, Full breath out. Now that right hand is going to come right through here. Going to kind of thread it through, place it on the mat, and then open up your left hand. We're opening up into the opposite direction. Open your chest and spiral it up towards the ceiling. And now from here, we're going to fold over into a side stretch. So this left hand is going to come towards that left foot. That foot is active. Those toes are popped up without letting this shoulder drop forward. So try to keep the shoulder up, spiral your heart upwards, come into a side stretch here. Inhale, come back up to the top. We're going to come into a different variation of that butterfly pose now. So come into butterfly pose, knees wide, soles of feet together, and we're going to just forward fold into this. And we're going to stay here for a couple of breaths. So depending on your flexibility, a couple of options here. You can start by dipping your chin and just rolling forward. You can bring your head onto a block. You could just take your forearms down, round your back. Another option, if you're really flexible, is to lift your knees up a little bit, take your forearms under your calves, and just lower your head down. So we're going to take a moment here. Find a spot and settle in. We'll be here for about 30 seconds. Just really enjoy this stretch. This is a great time to just take some really deep breaths and notice what that feels like. Take notice of what your ribs are doing as you're breathing in and out. Maybe notice what your shoulder blades do. Notice your breath in your back. And one last deep breath, a completely full inhale all the way. And then a full exhale. And wherever you're at, take your palms down, use your hands to walk yourself back up. And then we'll come to the other side. So this time, extend your left leg long and bring that right sole foot to the inner thigh. Make any adjustments that you need to. Shift your chest and your torso towards that extended leg. Pop these toes up, really activate this foot. Keep it flexed upward. Sit up nice and tall. So as you breathe in, sit up tall and keeping that long spine without curving your back, just walk forward towards those extended toes. Just where you feel a comfortable stretch, but you're still keeping that long spine. And then use your hands to walk back up. This time we're going to round into it. We're going to really fall and melt into this stretch. So we'll start by dipping our chin and then walking your hands forward. Keep that foot flexed. And go ahead and round your chin, round your back. Come down to wherever's comfortable for you. So you can stay right here. You can take your forearms to the mat. If you do that, try palms up. If you'd like to and you're able to, you can reach towards that foot. And then take your right hand to the outside of that left ankle. On an inhale, reach your left hand behind you. Open up your heart towards the back of the room. Full inhale and exhale. Now take that left hand and thread it through this space. Plant it on the mat. Inhale and reach your right arm behind you and really spiral your heart up towards the ceiling. Enjoy this stretch. And then from here, we're going to take that right arm and come into a side bend, keeping that upper shoulder up. Don't let that shoulder flop forward. Come all the way into a side bend, however far feels good to you. And it might be different from side to side. Come back up, and we'll do one last version of that butterfly pose. So again, come to butterfly, make any adjustments that you need to feel comfortable. Last time in butterfly pose. Soles of your feet together, and you can adjust how far forward or close together your feet are. Sit up nice and tall, and this time clasp your fingers behind your back, so like this, but behind your back. If that's not comfortable for you, you can bend your elbows and just hold on to opposite wrists like this. So take your hands behind your back, squeeze your shoulder blades together, open up through your collarbones. We're going to round forward and take those hands towards the ceiling. If you're not clasping fingers, you can just keep your hands resting on your low back. The goal here is to just open up across those shoulders. So inhale tall, and then as you exhale, just roll and fold forward. Maybe take those hands up towards the ceiling. If your fingers are not clasped, just keep your hands on your low back. And then release your hands and bring them to the mat in front of you next to your head and walk back up. Now we'll come to long legs. So whichever direction works for you, take your legs out long, shake them out, wiggle them out. Take your feet wide, about 18 inches apart. Maybe lean back a little and just roll those feet side to side. Another option here is to bend your knees with your feet wide. Lean back a little bit and just windshield wiper those hips back and forth and release some of that tension that might have built up. Really enjoy that stretch. And from here, we're going to come to lying down. Make sure that you have a blanket or a yoga block handy if you'd like to for some final, more relaxing stretching. So go ahead and lower down however's comfortable for you. Seat in the middle of the mat. And again, just make sure that you have a blanket or a yoga block nearby at hand. We'll start in dead bug. So take both feet straight up towards the ceiling, both hands up towards the ceiling. Just roll your ankles, roll your wrists, switch direction if you need to. And then bring the soles of your feet to the mat with knees straight up. Bring your right ankle over your left thigh and make sure that it's not the heel. Make sure that the heel is shooting past that thigh. So you want your ankle there. And then maybe press that knee away from you. If you feel a stretch in the outer hip of this leg that's raised up, you can stay right here. Otherwise, you can tuck a yoga block under that lower foot to raise it up. Again, keep this upper foot, just like we did seated, keep this upper foot active. Tip those toes up towards the ceiling. So this foot is not flopping, this foot is really engaged and active. You might feel a stretch here. Otherwise, you can reach your hand through this little triangle, grab the back of your thigh, and pull this upper raised shin towards your chest. You can hold on to your thigh, you can hold on to your shin. Another option here, if that's hard to reach, is to put something under your head, and that will help you reach through easier. Take a moment here. Make sure that this foot is flexed, and see if you can take this knee and press it away from you. So as we're bringing our shin towards our chest, we're not bringing this knee in, we're keeping that knee pressed away and then bringing this whole figure 4 shape towards us. Your lower foot can be relaxed, this upper foot needs to stay active. And take a few deep breaths here and just settle into the stretch. This is a little bit more passive stretch than we were doing seated. And go ahead and release that. Take that foot down to the ground. And then we'll switch sides. So lower your right foot to the ground. Bring your left ankle up and over your right thigh. So make sure that the heel is shooting past and it's actually the ankle on that thigh. So maybe you feel a stretch here, just like this. You can also put a yoga block under that lower leg to raise it up. And again, make sure that your left foot is engaged. Those toes are pointing straight up towards the ceiling. This foot is very active, and you want to make sure that this knee isn't coming towards you too much. So our goal is to bring this shin towards our chest without bringing this knee too close. So you might feel the stretch right here. That's great. If you'd like to, you can lift that towards you, keeping this knee pressed away. reach through here, hold on to your thigh, or hold on to your shin. Make sure your left upper foot is still pointing up towards the ceiling. Find a spot here that's comfortable for you where you can really feel the stretch. It might be in your outer hip. It's different for everyone. You might feel it in your glutes. Take a deep breath here and just really settle in and let yourself kind of melt into this pose a little bit. This is a wonderful stretch to do in bed, either when you wake up in the morning or before you go to bed at night. Go ahead and lower that foot to the ground, release that. We're going to do a little bit of hip strengthening. Might as well add it in before we end. So I'll ask you to roll onto your side, and we'll do the other side as well. So find a comfortable spot where your knees are bent. You're going to take that upper leg and straighten it out. Activate that foot. So really pull those toes towards your head. And then from here, what we're going to do is just take the raised leg, those toes, aim them down to the ground and then up to the ceiling. Down to the ground, up to the ceiling. So this upper leg is just about a foot off the mat. So we're using these muscles to hold that leg up, but then we're also using all of our hip muscles to rotate that foot down and up. This really activates a lot of muscles in our whole hip area. And the trick is to really keep that foot active. Keep those toes pulled towards your face. Go ahead and release that. Maybe stretch out that leg. Just do a little movement, whatever feels good to you. Use your hands to press yourself back up. We're going to shift to the other side. So we'll come to lie down on our opposite side. Knees bent. Take that upper leg about a foot off the mat. Flex that foot, really activate that foot. Pull the toes up towards your head. And then use your hip muscles to angle the toes down and then back up. You're rotating your whole leg, your femur down and then up. This is internal rotation and external rotation of the hip. Nice and slow. It's not a race. The slower you go and the more controlled you go, the more you're using those muscles. And then go ahead and lower that leg. Maybe feel a little stretch, do a little sway if you need to. And then we're going to end with just a lovely full side stretch. So come onto your back. Legs long. Arms overhead. Take a full breath in. Really feel that stretch. As if somebody is pulling your toes and fingers in opposite directions. Really, really stretch. And then bend your knees, soles of your feet to the mat, and then go ahead and hug your knees in towards your chest. Just give them a squeeze, give them a hug. Maybe sway side to side a little bit. Then take your legs out long again, arms overhead. And from here, we're going to end in banana pose. And I love this one because it's such a great stretch. So from here, take both feet one step to the left. So you're keeping both hips and both shoulders to the mat. You're just taking your feet sideways. With your left hand, hold on to your right wrist and then bring your whole upper torso towards the left. So we are in a banana shape laying down. Check that both hips and both shoulders still have contact with the floor. Take a few deep breaths here and maybe do a little body scan. Just notice, where do you feel this stretch? Last full deep breath. And then release your hands, keep them overhead. Walk your feet back to center. And then take your feet one step to the right. With your right hand, hold onto your left wrist and then shift your torso so that your whole torso is bending towards the right as well. Use that right hand to pull that left wrist overhead and make sure that both hips and both shoulders are still connecting with the floor. And just like the other side, really notice where you feel the stretch in your body. Take a few deep breaths. Notice your ribs moving as you breathe in and out. And then release your hands. Bring your feet back to center, and you can bend your knees here or keep your legs long. It's your choice. Lift up your hips and shift your spine if you need to find your center again. Take your feet wide towards the edges of the mat. Last windshield wiper of your hips, side to side. Your knees are going back and forth in the same direction. And I invite you to just stay here for a moment if you'd like to. You stay as long as you'd like to. And just notice what your legs feel like. Notice what your hips feel like. Maybe your inner thighs. Take a few deep breaths. If you have any tension left over in your hips after all of that stretching, think about using your exhale to let that go. Maybe take a full breath in. And on the exhale, just consciously think about releasing any tension in your hip area. And thank you for joining me on my mat. Namaste.